11 movies, 3 trilogies, and 2 spin-offs in the making. Here it is, the end of the Skywalker saga. Don't fuck this up. Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, is the final film in the new sequel trilogy of movies in the Star Wars universe, and the end of the 40 years in the making Skywalker saga. We once again follow the continued adventures of Rey, Finn, and Poe, with a few more returning favorites this time. This is it, the big ending. This is the one that they gotta stick. This is the one that we've all been waiting for. So do they stick the landing? Kinda. I know I'm late with this review. In all actuality, I saw the movie the night it came out almost 2 weeks ago now. But seeing as how I hadn't quite finished my Star Wars review series, and you know, life happens, I wasn't able to do the review until now. Which I think was actually a good thing, because it gave me more time to think about it and marinate on this movie, because there's a lot to think about here. Where to begin? Let's start with some good stuff. The performances. They're all really good here. Everybody does a great job, and they're very much more in line with The Force Awakens than with The Last Jedi. If you saw my review of The Last Jedi, you know that I thought that that movie's performances seemed like they were lacking a little bit of the fun that the original trilogy and The Force Awakens had. I am happy to report that in The Rise of Skywalker, it seems as if they found that happiness and that joy of being in Star Wars movie again. I think it goes without saying that the special effects here are really good. I mean, it's 2019 and this movie had an astronomical budget, I'm sure, so everything on screen looks really nice. Per usual, the score is great as well. Much like The Force Awakens, it's very reminiscent of the original trilogy with a few new pieces. It's rousing when it needs to be, it's somber when it needs to be. It does everything it's supposed to. It's a very solid score by the amazing John Williams. The movie also has some really great set pieces. There's lots of fun and exciting moments in this movie. The 2 Rey versus Kylo Ren fights are awesome. One of which that utilizes the bridge that they formed in the last movie, being one of the most creative and exciting scenes in the movie. This is actually a really awesome scene with a really cool twist to where 2 people are fighting, but they're in 2 different places. It's really creative in the way that it's shot and how everything in the scene reacts to what's going on. All the other spectacle in the movie is just that. It's spectacle, it's grand, it's really exciting and fun. It's well shot, well done, and just an entertaining ride overall. One of the things leading up to the release of this movie that everyone was wondering how they were going to do was pretty much anything involving Carrie Fisher's Princess Leia. As we all know, Carrie Fisher unfortunately passed away before any of this movie was even shot. So they had to use a lot of unused footage from the previous 2 movies and put it together and make her character out of that. I'm sure that was a daunting task, and having heard that to the lead up of this movie, I was kind of wondering how out of place it was all going to seem. Well, not at all, that's how. They did a fucking amazing job here. If I didn't know that Carrie Fisher wasn't actually alive when they made this movie, I would have never thought that she wasn't actually there on set. It's all done very tastefully, and she doesn't have like a small role. She actually has a larger role in this Star Wars movie than she did in the previous 2. I don't know how they did it all, but man, they did a fantastic job. While everyone here does get their resolution to the story that's been going on for so long, there is one that stands above all the others, and that is, of course, just like the previous 2 movies, Kylo Ren. Ren's story arc in this trilogy is the most complete, natural, and satisfying out of everyone else in the whole entire trilogy. And Adam Driver once again brings his A game to every aspect of this character, which he's not the only one. Rey, which I think most would consider the main character of this trilogy, finally gets some much needed character building and fleshing out. However, this is where things start to get divided. They made some choices, and while some people had a lot of issues with the choices they made in The Last Jedi, I think those same people are gonna have some issues with these choices as well. Now, this is still a fairly new movie, so I'm not gonna spoil anything here, but there's some things that happen in this movie that probably could have been a bit smoother. Let's talk about pace. This movie is fast. I mean, like real fast. Too fast. It just like starts. There's no roll up to what's going on or like a slow beginning or any of that. Oh no, none of that whatsoever. This movie just starts and goes, and all the way to the end credits, it is going at like 100 miles an hour. There is no time to breathe in this thing because they are trying to cram in so much stuff. And that's one of the biggest problems. They are trying to cram in so much stuff in the beginning of this movie to make their story that they have here work. And I know what you're saying. Well, you got 2 movies that preceded this one that should have led up to this story. Yeah, that's how trilogies usually work, but not this time. It's clear that what they're trying to do is correct, or depending on your stance on The Last Jedi, change a lot of the stuff that happened in that movie. And this is what happens when you don't have a clear vision of your trilogy. Or if they did have a clear vision, they let somebody come in and do their own thing halfway through so that they could come up and say, oh, no, we don't like that. We want to go back to the way we wanted to do it originally. I really don't know which way they did it. All I know is that while love or hate The Last Jedi, it was quite a departure from The Force Awakens and clearly went in a different direction. And that's fine. But when they bring back the same director of The Force Awakens to fix this movie, instead of building off of the last movie, they just start this movie, and the whole time they're trying to retcon everything from The Last Jedi so that they could get this story told. This comes off as very sloppy and messy. And there's so much crap that they throw at you, it seems like there's 2 movies worth of information thrown into one. And parts of it just seem kind of like a jumbled mess. I mean, really, when the movie starts, you feel like you missed a movie. This does not naturally flow out of The Last Jedi. And like I said, that's this movie's biggest issue. Really, that's this trilogy's biggest issue. Each movie is trying to do something different when all 3 should be trying to tell a narrative arc. But no, they're not. The Force Awakens was trying to get more back in line with the original trilogy. The Last Jedi was trying to be new and bold and do something different. And this movie is trying to retcon all of that and take it back to somewhere near where The Force Awakens was. And you just can't do all that with one movie. If they had a different direction they wanted to go, a different story they wanted to tell with this movie, that's fine, but you still need to launch off of the last movie. You need to start where that one ended naturally and then evolve your story into the one you're wanting to tell. Take some aspects of that last movie and work it into your lore. Work it into your story so you still get to the same end goal. Don't just come in and say, we'll spend the first half of the movie riding the ship, changing a whole bunch of stuff around, cramming in everything that would have been in the second movie had I made it, but wasn't there because someone else did, so that we can get to this last act that I have envisioned. It just doesn't work that way. Or at least in this movie it didn't. I don't know, maybe there's a longer cut out there somewhere that's like 3 or 4 hours long, and it does work. But that ain't the cut we got. We got this 2 hour and change cut that just everything seems really fucking jumbled. And then there's the Emperor, which admittedly is a pretty cool part of this movie. And the whole story arc they're trying to tell with that character is a pretty neat idea. But since none of that whatsoever was set up in either of the previous 2 movies, the setup for this character in this movie just seems really forced. It just doesn't flow well, and the way that we learn that this character is back in the universe is very abrupt. I'm okay with the idea of this character in this movie, and regardless of how far-fetched it is, it didn't bother me. It was actually kind of neat when he was there. But the execution of revealing this character to us and saying that, hey, he's back, was just really rushed, abrupt, and kind of messy. Like I said though, out of all these things, the biggest offender here, the biggest problem with this movie is that they devote far too much time to fixing, correcting, or changing things that occurred in The Last Jedi. This breakneck pace and the sloppy nature of the beginning of the movie surprisingly makes this movie seem less like a Star Wars movie than the previous 2. Yes, even The Last Jedi. I mean, it is still a Star Wars movie, but it seems like a lot of the fun has been lost in just trying to get as much info on screen as possible. It moves so fast that it doesn't have time for that Star Wars fun. I know I'm really ragging on this movie and it sounds like I just didn't like it. And that's not totally true. I did find enjoyment in this movie and I had a fairly good time with it. But this is the cap on a 40-year 9-movie saga. Your expectations for something like that are a bit higher than other movies. And when it comes to that aspect of it, yes, I was a bit disappointed here. I didn't hate the movie. It was a good time. There's fun to be had here. I mean, you gotta look, because it's really fast, but there is fun to be had here. It's an entertaining movie, and the second half does slow down a little bit and make it a bit more accessible than the first. But there's also lots of flaws. And I do think the movie is worth checking out, but probably just for a rent. While worth a rent on my scale is by no means a bad rating, it does kind of break my heart that this movie wasn't a few notches above. It could have been. There are the markings of a great movie here, but it's just so sloppy in that first half that it just loses something. Either way, there is some good times to be had here, and it is worth a watch. So there it is, guys, my review of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a thumbs up. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, for the last time, may the Force be with you, and I'll see you guys next time.
What are you doing there, 3PO?
Taking one last look, sir, at my friends.
I'm not going to spoil anything, but I do want to talk real quick about the title of this movie, The Rise of Skywalker. You don't really figure out the meaning of that title until the end of the movie, and the reasoning is kind of loose, to say the least. I feel like they came up with the title of this movie because it sounded kind of cool and compelling before they actually came up with a connection of why the movie would be called that. I mean, I'm okay, I guess, with what the Rise of Skywalker means, but compared to the meaningfulness of the previous titles in the series, it's kind of weak. It is a cool sounding title though, so I'll give them that.
The Force will be with you.